When we talk about narcissists, we often conjure up an image of power, as if they have reached a state of invulnerability, never knowing guilt or weakness. You may not have realized that. The arrogance they display externally is actually a tragic curtain, hung to conceal a painful truth, the fear of having their inner emptiness and lack of unconditional love exposed. And miraculously, the universe has arranged for a person capable of touching this wound without using force, the superempath. Their power is not a fiery response, but a field of absolute peace, a silent presence that cannot be distorted by any manipulation tactics. The superempath does not shout or try to prove themselves. They simply embrace everything with wisdom. They see through the dramatic mind games, the complex lies, and perceive the small, trembling soul hiding behind the smug smile. This completely detached, insightful gaze is the most severe punishment for the narcissist. Why? Because when the superempath fully withdraws their reactive energy, cutting off the manipulator's emotional fuel, they force the narcissist to confront the terrifying echo of the internal loneliness they have spent a lifetime avoiding. In today's video, we will delve into how the superempath achieves this seemingly impossible feat. We will explore the qualities forged through the fire of trials, which transform them into the perfect energetic counterbalance, capable of neutralizing all manipulation tactics without fighting back. If you are seeking the strength to escape toxic relationships, if you want to turn pain into the light of awareness so you are never hurt again, you must watch Divided by Read this entire content. This is not just a psychological analysis, but a lesson in soul freedom. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on deep content that helps you raise your frequency and protect your energy. Please leave a comment below to share your experiences with narcissists. Together, we will build a community where light and wisdom are always upheld. We have seen that the superempath does not need weapons to win. They win through stillness and awareness. And the foundation for that immense power is precisely self-possession and unshakable self-worth, a steel pillar of the soul that has been forged. Superempaths are souls who have walked through the fire of manipulation and betrayal, and instead of being consumed, they have been refined into pure gold. They have completed the alchemy of suffering, turning every wound into light. Because of this, they know exactly who they are, what they stand for, and what is non-negotiable. While the world often teaches us that our worth lies in approval, reputation, or being loved by others, the superempath has transcended that illusion. They understand that true worth does not come from being loved. It comes from the ability to remain oneself even when unloved. They do not need to prove, plead, or please anyone in order to exist. Deep within the superempath is a steady moral compass, a firm axis that no storm can break. The narcissist, who lives by control and defines their value through the reactions of others, finds a person like the superempath to be both terrifyingly magnetic and an unbearable threat. This self-possession naturally becomes the most ruthless mirror. When standing in the superempath's calm light, everything the narcissist tries to conceal, weakness, fear of abandonment, and inner emptiness, is reflected with stark clarity. Every trick, every mask becomes meaningless. Ordinary empaths also possess kindness, but that kindness is often tied to blind sacrifice. They fear disappointing others, losing love, or being left behind. Many carry old childhood wounds, growing up where love was conditional, where they had to change themselves to be accepted. They learned to read others to survive, but lost the ability to listen to themselves. They came to believe that love means enduring pain, that goodness means silence, and that compassion means self-betrayal. But the superempath has stepped out of that pattern. They were once manipulated and betrayed, but instead of disappearing, they awakened. They realized that pain comes to refine, not to destroy. They no longer avoid the darkness, because they understand that darkness is the raw material from which light is born. Every wound becomes a lesson. Every fall becomes a piece of gold forged in the furnace of experience. The narcissist may slander them, belittle them, or try to make them doubt themselves, but the superempath remains unmoved. They no longer seek validation or justice through apologies or through other people's eyes. They seek only the truth. Once the superempath finds the inner truth, they need nothing else. They know that integrity is not a virtue on display, but a silent strength that keeps them upright in the storm without losing themselves. The superempath is the embodiment of light with a spine, a light that not only shines but stands firm and unextinguished. They do not wear masks to please, nor do they compromise their values just to be loved. They do not live to appease, they live to be true to their soul. It is this honesty that sets them apart. In a world where many choose compliance to survive, the superempath chooses truth to live. They understand that freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the ability to say no to anything that betrays the soul. This solid foundation of self-awareness, integrity, and independence becomes the ground for their next defining trait: the ability to set clear, sacred, and unshakable boundaries. The solid foundation of self-possession and independence leads the superempath to their next defining trait: the art of unshakable boundaries. This is one of the standout qualities that completely separates the superempath from the rest of the world, encompassing not just boundaries in behavior, but boundaries in consciousness. They deeply understand that love, no matter how vast, still needs form, and that form is the boundary. Without boundaries, compassion becomes a double-edged sword, saving others while self-destructing. For the superempath, a boundary is not a wall of separation, but a sacred circle protecting the wholeness of the soul. Inside that circle, they guard their peace, dignity, and life energy. Outside it, they observe with empathy but refuse to be swept away. While many ordinary empaths still struggle with guilt when they have to say no, the superempath knows that refusal can be the highest form of love, as it protects both sides from long-term harm. Ordinary empaths may recognize the importance of boundaries, yet their soft hearts and fear of rejection make it difficult to enforce them. They fear upsetting others, being seen as selfish, and thus easily become fertile ground for manipulation. But the superempath is different. They have paid the price of lessons too costly to forget. They know that no one has the right to touch the sacred space within without permission. They not only recognize their limits, but dare to live those limits firmly and consistently. The superempath's boundaries are not rigid rules, but an inner navigation system. It tells them what aligns, what intrudes, and what requires distance. And because they possess this internal system, they are not easily swayed by others' emotions, nor do they fall into the guilt trap when they must protect themselves. When confronting controlling individuals, especially narcissists, the superempath does not react with anger or argumentation, but with conscious stillness. They see the motive, recognize the game, and withdraw their energy from the board entirely. Their non-participation becomes the most powerful form of refusal. More than anyone, they understand that boundaries are the prerequisite for any healthy relationship. Without boundaries, there can be no respect, and without respect, every relationship becomes a disguised form of possession. The superempath sets boundaries not to punish or to distance, but to maintain the sacred balance between giving and preserving, between kindness and self-respect. They know they cannot fill another's cup when their own is empty. Thus, for them, boundaries are not just a fence of protection, but a declaration of identity. I respect you, but I also respect myself. This is how they teach the world that kindness is not blind sacrifice, and love is never self-destruction. When others witness how calmly and gracefully the superempath protects themselves, they learn an invaluable lesson. Boundaries do not create distance. Boundaries give us shape, dignity, and peace. This is what makes the superempath the model for a new generation. Those who can feel deeply, love sincerely, yet stop when necessary. In a world where lies are polished into art, where masks are celebrated more than authenticity, radical honesty becomes a revolutionary act. And that is precisely what makes the superempath dangerous in the eyes of the narcissist. Not because they attack, but because they illuminate. Narcissists live by pretense, pretending to be good, pretending to be strong, pretending to be loving. Their entire world is built on illusion and the deliberate repetition of deception. So, when they face someone who cannot be manipulated, who doesn't twist words, who refuses to bargain with silence or survive through lies, they feel as though they are standing before an unbreakable mirror. The superempath's honesty not only exposes the narcissist's behavior, but also forces them to confront the rot within themselves. For the superempath, honesty is not an action, it is a state of being. They don't use truth as a weapon, but they also don't distort it to please anyone. They believe that remaining silent before wrong is complicity, and compromising with falsehood is betraying one's own soul. When the superempath speaks, it is not to win an argument, but to ensure that something true still remains in the world. Narcissists and their dependents, those who dwell in the shadows of emotional manipulation, cannot tolerate this. They are accustomed to circular conversations where words mean nothing, where smiles conceal schemes. The directness, clarity, and transparency of the superempath are languages they neither understand nor control. To the narcissist, a single honest sentence can feel like a blade slicing through the mask they have spent a lifetime constructing. So, when the superempath says, "I don't believe that," or "that's not true," it is more than mere defiance. It is an energetic act of liberation. It breaks the narcissist's power structure, one built upon ambiguity and the constant self-doubt of others. Of course, the superempath's honesty is often misunderstood as cold or aggressive, but only by those too accustomed to falsehood. In truth, it is the courage of someone who has moved beyond the fear of being disliked. They do not speak truth to wound, they speak to clear the air. They know that lies feed darkness, and only truth, even when painful, can set the human soul free. In an age where truth has become a rare commodity, those who live it are spiritual warriors. They not only protect themselves from manipulation but also stand as mirrors for the world, showing what integrity looks like amid chaos. Their honesty is not merely a shield, it is an act of collective awakening. For while the narcissist hides behind 1,000 disguises to protect their image, the superempath needs only one thing: the truth. And that is what terrifies the narcissist most. Not the shouting, not the revenge, but the calm gaze and steady words of someone who has seen through them. In a world filled with wounds and conflict, compassion is a rare flame. But for the superempath, that flame doesn't just light the way for others, it also warms their own soul. This is the profound difference between an ordinary empath and a superempath. One loves to the point of self-erasure, while the other loves without losing themselves. Ordinary empaths often carry hearts so vast that every pain in the world can enter uninvited. They are easily moved, easily touched, and easily sacrificed. They give endlessly, believing that unconditional love will save the world. Yet what they often forget is that they, too, belong to that world and are just as worthy of love as anyone else. They can cradle everyone else's wounds but neglect their own. They can forgive the whole world, yet remain merciless toward themselves. After walking through the desert of emotional depletion and energy drainage, the superempath has learned a simple but profound truth. Real compassion must begin within. They understand that if their heart is abandoned and their soul is torn, the love they give becomes a burden rather than a gift. So they learn to love themselves, not through indulgence, but through understanding, respect, and deep care. Their compassion is love fused with wisdom. They know when to stay and when to leave, when to help and when to let go. They do not save others to feel worthy. They help out of pure goodness, free from expectation. They know no one can be saved until they are willing to save themselves. For that reason, the superempath's kindness is no longer a reflex born of fear or guilt, but a conscious choice born of awareness. This is why the superempath is a dual healer. One who helps others rediscover their light while continuously tending to their own inner flame. They do not overflow to the point of disappearing or depletion. They radiate within sacred limits. In them, giving and preserving form a single cycle of healthy energy. They give from wholeness, not from emptiness. Their compassion is quiet, It seeks no praise, no reward. It is a silent light that spreads through every action, every gaze, every mindful choice. And this balance makes them strong, for they understand that true love is not losing oneself, but becoming a safe place for oneself first before becoming a safe place for others. Perhaps this is what makes the superempath extraordinary. They are not only kind-hearted but consciously aware of the sacred value of kindness. They are living proof of a forgotten truth. You cannot heal the world by destroying yourself. When the narcissist's charming mask begins to crack, a new act begins, the theater of gaslighting, distorting reality to make you doubt your emotions and memories. This is their most insidious weapon, designed to maintain power and control. To most people, gaslighting feels like a thick fog, disorienting them and making them believe everything is their fault. But for the superempath, that fog can no longer cloud their vision. When the narcissist says, "I never said that," or "You're overreacting," or "You remembered it wrong," the superempath doesn't panic or argue. They observe, they remember. They notice the shift in tone, in eyes, in energy. They know manipulation is at play, and instead of getting trapped in the emotional game, they withdraw their energy from the board entirely. The very moment they stop trying to prove themselves, the narcissist's power begins to crumble. The superempath understands the mechanism of gaslighting. It isn't just lying, it's a deliberate strategy to fracture one's self-trust. The narcissist's goal isn't to win an argument, it's to make you stop believing in your own reality. But the superempath, having once been deeply broken by this very tactic, now recognizes it instantly. They know that when someone tries to make you question your truth, that person fears your clarity, because clarity is power. The superempath's strength lies not in sharp retorts, but in absolute calm. They don't fall into emotional traps. They don't get dragged into the endless debates narcissists use to drain energy. Instead, they stand firm, a mirror that reflects every lie back to its source. For the manipulator, that is like being burned alive in the light of truth. When the narcissist tries to use guilt as a leash, the superempath doesn't defend. They inquire, "Is this true? Who benefits from this guilt?" Questions are their weapons, for gaslighting can only survive in the absence of inquiry. They do not lock themselves in fear of being misunderstood, because they know truth doesn't need defense. It only needs to be held. They are silent warriors of truth, capable of seeing through every script a narcissist stages. Where others panic under accusation, the superempath stays centered, knowing the truth needs no noise. Their calmness deprives the narcissist of emotional fuel. You cannot drain energy from someone who no longer reacts. Their strength comes from an inner resilience forged in fire. They have been manipulated, made to doubt their own mind. But instead of collapsing, they grew sharper, clearer. They learned to distinguish between reality and projection. That awareness becomes their energetic armor, impenetrable by lies or control. When confronting a narcissist, they do not need to scream or expose through cruelty. They only need to remain unmoved. In the narcissist's world, failing to make you doubt yourself is the greatest defeat. Because when you are no longer manipulated by words, when you see every tactic yet remain serene, you become a mirror they cannot bear to face. The light of awareness dissolves the games of darkness. That is why the superempath is the narcissist's greatest threat. Not because they seek revenge, but because they can no longer be controlled. In a world built on manipulation and illusion, a person who cannot be controlled has already won. In summary, what makes the superempath the greatest nightmare for the narcissist is not fierce resistance, but unshakable serenity. The narcissist lives on reaction. They need the anger, the explanations, or the flicker of fear in their victim's eyes to feel powerful. But when the superempath stops responding, stops wavering, and stops feeding them energy, the narcissist's entire control system begins to collapse. For the superempath, victory never comes from defeating someone, but from refusing to descend into the same frequency of darkness. They understand that the narcissist doesn't fear losing love, they fear losing control. And when you withdraw your energy, When you walk off the board without declaring victory, the narcissist falls into the void they themselves created. The superempath does not seek revenge because they understand that the greatest revenge is freedom and peace. They don't need to prove anything because the truth already stands with them. They don't need to speak loudly because their silence says everything. That silence is not weakness, it is the declaration of an awakened soul. When the narcissist sees you, the one they once thought they could control, now standing there, calm, clear, and untouchable, that is the moment they truly lose. Because their power was never in strength, but in their ability to make you doubt yourself. Once you reclaim that inner trust, the entire structure of manipulation collapses like a sandcastle, and that is the ultimate truth of this battle. Light doesn't need to fight darkness, it only needs to shine. When the superempath chooses awareness over reaction, peace over proof, and healing over revenge, they not only escape the toxic cycle, but also transcend the human cycle of suffering, opening a new chapter of consciousness where compassion walks with wisdom and light learns how to protect itself.